really very fortunate to have eminent panelists to take a very important topic with regard to the sustainable development and the athlete sports system. Athletes often sacrifice not only time, comfort, but education, identity, and long-term security in pursuit of excellence. Yet no Olympic system can truly call itself successful if it depends on such irreversible trade-offs. This is the lens through which I would like to contribute to today's discussion and this panel discussion on building a sustainable integrated athlete development ecosystem, one that produces sporting excellence while simultaneously safeguarding human dignity, education, and future livelihoods. From an Indian perspective, and being the former Vice Chancellor of shaping the National Sports University, and now with the leadership, I mean, there are research gaps, and I'd just like to brief on certain aspects of it, at least from the higher education point of view. We find that there's a fragmentation, the central weakness of the athlete pathways. Athletes, India athlete development system is not short of talent. We do not have short of ambitions, but one of the major drawbacks is an integration in terms of the schools, universities, and high performance academies. I would not like to give much of an example, but the International Olympic system increasingly recognizes that such fragmentation is unstable, unsustainable. Countries that perform consistently embed dual career pathways early, ensuring that education and sport progress together. India must move from a model of talent extraction to one of talent protection and continuity. Education as a structural safeguard, not a fallback option. There are a number of athletes who tend to drop out. Education actually helps the athlete in cognitive resilience, identity beyond performance, and decision-making capacity, long-term employability. I think here it's very important that institutions need to guarantee education for the athlete and not leave it to the athlete alone. In terms of research, there are a lot of gaps which I'll be taking up later, but another important aspect is safeguarding. So today morning, Marcus was mentioning a lot of the aspects, but I think in terms of safeguarding, from compliance, it needs to be brought into culture, and in terms of gender equity, it's important to design systems that actually retain women. Because even we talk of the gender parity of the Paris 2024 Olympics, but we talk in terms of the leadership, what exactly it is. I think these are some of the questions that need to be brought in. And a very important aspect which we'll be discussing today, how is it that the Rushdee University can bring in, and I think there's a lot of scope with this Center for the Biocenter for the Olympic Studies, the only in the country, and as mentioned in Asia, there's a huge scope. And I think with this, we'll be coming up, it's very important, I'd like to remind the panelists that we should come up with points which will be brought as a resolution, and towards the end, that should be there, because just having a panel discussion will not be worthwhile. So with this, I now invite Nileshwar, who's a very eminent Indian cricketer. I think that most of you here will be a fan of Nileshwar, and a person who's the founder of the Indian Institute of Management. So please.
Good evening. Good evening. I'll make it very crisp and sweet before we go on to the panel discussion. For India to be recognized at a global level in hosting Commonwealth Games and successfully completing the bid for Olympics, we need three main pillars for us to then deliver what is expected from the world body. First, the most important critical component is to create a world-class infrastructure which caters to the demands and the standards and the guidelines of International Olympic Committee for hosting international event. Second most important component is to create the manpower which the supply chain actually deals with that kind of a demand and address the need more than a demand and a supply ratio. But the third most important thing is very few Olympic host cities could have planned better is the legacy planning of the existing infrastructure which is one of the key components where not much of a research has gone in, not much of an effort has gone in, not much of an attention been given. So according to me, these are the three pillars for India, not only successfully host Olympics and Commonwealth Games, but the legacy planning. And with Ahmedabad is in the fray, the 50% problem is already addressed. For all you know, there is a infrastructure which actually caters to more than 1 lakh capacity stadium, which can definitely host big events. Secondly, the investments have already gone in for indoor and outdoor facilities which I've created. So for me, there's a perfect recipe, and you as a center for creating research and other advantages will definitely make humongous sense. The only piece which I personally feel and I propose to you to consider is, can you have a high performance center here? Because Rushdee will agree to this, that one of the biggest gaps India is facing, and he comes from South Africa, so he understands the need of a high performance center for every player, from a trust to being fit or the prehab, rehab, and post is something which one of the biggest missing link. So I'm absolutely looking forward to having this conversation. But the point of submission which I would like to think of giving you as future students and professionals is how you will come up with solutions to address this is going to be a determining factor for India to be successfully hosting Commonwealth and Olympics Games. Thank you very much.
So we have Rushdee Warlwy, who is going to give us his opinion on this particular topic.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So, just to give you a little bit of background, yes, I am South African, and I've been living in India for the last 9 years. And prior to coming to India, I lived in New Zealand, and I've been very fortunate and blessed to have worked in sport my entire professional career, my entire professional life. Whether that was as a coach or whether that was as eventually an administrator and a sports management professional. I think there's lots of, as Nilesh referred to, I've been very fortunate to have been a part of building a private high performance center. And really good to see one of our students sitting here who's actually volunteering in the crowd, Vishal. But for me, the opportunity in India is so great, so huge. There's there's many opportunities, there's many uh, mechanisms whereby you can start leveraging opportunities through CSR, where you have public-private partnerships to build these high-performance centers. Having said that, building these high-performance centers requires not only the infrastructure, but understanding and the opportunity to be able to feed into that, feed the right athletes into that, feed the right personnel into that. And that's where the education processes do come in. It's no really as, building an infrastructure is probably the easiest part, but putting the right people into that infrastructure is more critical than anything else. And fortunately, we also have Cedric here with us. ASTS in India has also been very, been very active in producing sports management professionals. for me, one of the things that I would always say to the teams that I lead, and if we as India want to be a top team nation in the world and win gold medals at the Olympic Games, we have to have gold medal sports management professionals that are supporting our athletes. That's critical. I think for me, again, the opportunity to develop research within India and domestic research is huge, whether that be from a sociological point of view or a scientific point of view. There's very few papers that you find that are focused on one, the Indian athlete, the sociology of the Indian athlete, the psychology of the Indian athlete, the physiology of the Indian athletes. We're always looking at papers that have a European context, an American context, a South African context, an Australian context. And yet, we're not comparing apples and apples. Many of the athletes that we're developing are athletes that are coming from a very different culture, very different context. So these are opportunities that are sitting in there. Again, I think one thing that is highly under research would be the sociology aspect and where athletes come from and the impact of that sociology on how it is that they move forward in their sporting careers. Having said all that, I think we do a lot of research, but what is most important is that research actually translates into practical solutions. So there's no, if you ask um, you know, any practicing uh, uh, sports scientist or coach, what it is that they're looking for, it has to translate in order for to have any value, it must translate into something, must translate into performance. And I think that's one thing that I always encourage you to do. Make sure that you spend enough time on the ground, understanding what the needs of the athletes are, understanding what the needs of the coaches are, and not just generating a question, generating a research question that is going to be put out there for a PhD, for a master's, etc. Because once you do that, and it essentially drops down into file 13 when nobody actually looks at it again. There's a good book that's out there, How to Support the Champion, written by a guy called Steve Ingham. And the only thing that he says when he went to work with the British Rowing team, which is one of the most successful teams in history, what am I going to do in order to make the boat go faster? And that was the question that was asked to him by probably the most decorated Olympian around outside of Michael Phelps, so Steve Redgrave. So if your research cannot answer the question, what is going to make the boat go faster, you need to rethink your question again. Thank you very much.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank the university for giving me this opportunity to be here. I am not from the high performance side, I'm actually from the grassroots side. I think we in India are currently getting it wrong, where our current focus to a major level from a policy standpoint is all going towards high performance. If you look into the depth of what the current policy should be or the countries we should follow, to look at how many people are even picking up sports and continuing to play sports all their life, I think that can eventually translate to better athletes. No doubt, the best need the best to get to the best. But at the same time, currently at a school level, at a college level, we see an increased number of dropouts of children after 8th grade, 9th grade who quit sports and never play sports ever again in their life. Even from a sports training standpoint, we don't even have a 9-month season of sports. We have almost, if I can say, a 5-month period in which children play sports and then stop playing in December when exam fever starts and goes up till March. So if we are, as a country, telling children at the ages of 9, 10, 11 that you got to quit sports to excel in studies, we're getting it wrong. So I think a conscious effort from a policy standpoint needs to come in terms of an increased amount of inclusion of children from all kinds of backgrounds who get an opportunity to play sports who continue to play sports. Currently, a large amount of our system is also heavily dependent at the inter-school level. And a large number of children who come from schools where they don't have a sports team actually don't even get a platform to compete. So unless you are a part of a school which has a rich sporting culture, you could actually not even get a chance to be a part of a team and compete from a club standpoint. There are particular states in India, I would say, where there is a certain amount of club culture, but a vast majority don't have that. And I think this will, while I wouldn't want this to be the way it is, but it will have to be a top-down approach where the top federation comes up with a guideline for the state federation, and the state federation eventually tells the district federation on how to increase participation. And when we talk about research and data, I don't think a large amount of data is being analyzed to see in a city. I come from a city called Noida. We had 20 schools participating 20 years back in an inter-school basketball tournament. We still have 25 schools only. So are we saying with an increased amount of population, more children are not actually competing? We don't have the right data. So a large amount of data collection in terms of research also needs to go into seeing how many young children are picking up sports and continuing to play sports for the rest of their life. One of the countries which I feel has been probably has one of the highest retentions in the world in terms of recreational sports might be Australia, where a large amount of people play a sport once or twice a week. India needs to aspire to be there. Once we are there, I think then the next steps will start in terms of elite athlete development, high talent identification, the best coaches from around the world helping India reach to the best of and achieve gold medals at the Olympics. But at the same time, I think we need to still find a balance in terms of I don't think we're going to get medals without actually focusing on grassroots. So that is something which I feel we all need to ponder upon and see how we can find that match. Thank you.
Thanks. I think in terms of broad basing of sport, I think very valid point, and having a culture of sports, as rightly pointed out. And I think only then we can have a cream. So it's a very valid point, which I think we could have further discussions later. So over to Mr. Cedric. Yeah.
Thank you. There's been already 3 very rich inputs on the panel. I'll try to bring in my perspective as well, not coming from the high performance era, but more actually on the sport management side of things and how we need a system to support the athletes in the high performance plan. There's been, yeah, I said, many good elements mentioned already, but maybe the one I'll come back to, which actually in the discussion we started touching upon yesterday, is at the bottom of it, the cultural and sociological element, as you just mentioned, Rushdee. I think it's also something we share back in Lausanne. This is sport is a sociological construct and is built on a sociological construct. So I think the primary thing is to understand indeed how the culture and the society works. Within those constructs, one thing that drives a lot of societies is often fear. And as parents, I think there's one fear that is probably shared across the globe, is making sure to see your children succeed in life. So of course you want the best for them, and you will create the best for them in the society you're in. And I think in that context, it's just normal that they put emphasis on studies and succeeding on, let's say, a traditional career. And it's been the same in many places around the world, and it's to a certain extent still the case in the Western world. Why I'm bringing that up is because I think that the research to be conducted, and there's many areas to look into, but I think the more is produced, the more conversations around sport are happening, just by the quantity and the volume of it, will be positive and help changing gradually the social construct and perception around sports. I think the core to it, in my view, is to understand that sports at any level for the individual is a benefit that ultimately brings benefit to society. Sure, in certain very challenging contexts, you have very clear priorities that are very pragmatic, but once you fulfill the basic needs, sport becomes really a tool for your sustainability. We're talking about a sustainable system here. Sport will make the individual, the corporate individual, the employee more performant. When you're in a stressful society with a lot of pressure on your job, making sure you have created and adopted the habit of practicing sports at a grassroots level, but that you've grown up with that and you have that on a daily basis, will make you more efficient in your job. That's been proven scientifically. So ultimately, that makes the society more efficient as well. But also, having sports being practiced by many people, and to the point that Rami shared earlier, if you go in a career in sport as a youngster and don't make it to the top, there are so many avenues, especially if when the sport ecosystem will start expanding, that you will be able to bring value in the sport ecosystem. We took the example of a journalist. Many elite athletes after their career are becoming a coach by default, but sometimes the best coaches are not necessarily the best athletes because you need pedagogy, you need a taste for research. So you go on that career, you don't make it as a top athlete, yeah, but maybe you have the skills that are required to be a very good coach, an elite coach. And I think it's about also getting people in society to understand that there are avenues like that, and the jobs in sport that are very rare are not just about being elite athletes, but really creating an ecosystem in sport. And there are many jobs in this respect that can be developed. And I think with India putting the focus on sports, there will be a need in the coming years to develop the right infrastructures, to develop the right managers that will operate the supply and all the contractors that will be needed to deliver the events, that will grow the ecosystem to training the athletes and building the pathways to get them on the podium. So yeah, that's the view is really looking at the social construct and try to progress the conversation. And I think discussions like today, the conference like today, thank you.
Thank you, Sergey. Because from this perspective, I felt, coming up with the dual degree programs, but I think the Rushdee University also think of certain certifications and which could be brought in as a model. Now, the Ministry of Executive and Sports has come up with this because they said, what about the Olympians who quit sport? And maybe some people an injury, what would happen to them? So in such cases, based on the level of their education, they're coming with projects. I think this proposal should come up as a resolution where we could come up with the kind of interest that the athlete has, so the athlete will not fail. So a number of countries are able to excel because they have a education continuing along with the training, which can help an athlete. So this is what I felt. Anyways, thank you for this. I think it's great, as you said, a journalist, maybe athlete may not all, but at least as a coach, as a masseur, as a physical therapist, as I think they can opt for in and out fields. So there are a lot of scopes which is possible. So I think in that direction, maybe a resolution could be put forth, but the ministry has already taken, the Ministry of Business Sports has taken initiative in this direction. Thank you so much. So now we have Nilesh Kulkarni, a great cricketer, because when we talk of cricket, this podium is very heavy because we are Indian cricketer right now with us. And from elite athlete to sports management, this transition to life after sport. So drawing from experience as a former international athlete and now as an institutional builder, where do you see the biggest disconnect between talent development and preparation for life beyond sport in India?
So I'll start a very simple number game for everybody's reference. When I played for India in '97, we had only one doctor. He was not a sports physiotherapist. There was only one doctor and one manager traveling with the Indian cricket team in '97. Today, for a first-class match or a team which is Mumbai Cricket Association travels with the 15 people support staff. From an Indian team to a first class, the transition has already begun. Second most important thing, where I'm just trying to listen to everybody's views. In India, you'll be surprised, we have got 1.5 million schools. We do not have enough physical education teacher, coaches, and trainers. So when I heard Pradyut talking about the grassroots development, it's a chicken and egg. We have enough and more kids interested in playing sport. But after 10, there is more than 73% kids drop out of sport. At a after 12th K-12 level, more than 88 to 91% kids drop out of sport. Who are responsible? Is it school, parents, the child, he or she, or the system? We need to find these answers for us to become a sport playing nation. Second most important point, which I was trying to listen to between Cedric and Rushdee, one of the unique features of India in the world, and no country, and I'm saying it with the data which we have officially published, India changes its weather, its lifestyle, and food habits at every 150 kilometer you go. From A point to B point, everything changes. Have we thought of addressing what is required for he or she to be a better athlete, to then think about aspiring a representation at a state or a national or international level? If not, we need to come up with an actionable plan for us to become a sustainable model to, because I may have food habits in Mumbai, but go to Pune, then the food habit changes. Go to Kolhapur, the food habit changes. You come to RRU, the food habit changes. You go to Ahmedabad, the food habit changes. You go to Rajkot, the food habit changes. You go to Baroda, the food habit changes. The lifestyle, the weather, everything is changed. Are we ready to recommend and suggest the right remedy and a recipe for him or her, from a nutritional value to a training value to a strength training or a recovery value? We don't have a model as on today, and that is an opportunity for me. What I see this as a great opportunity when we talk about high performance centers, or for that matter, Sports Authority of India have set up 927 centers across India, more than 25 high performance centers, with minimum 7 sports played in each of these centers. Do we have enough talent chain supplying to those centers? Our Honorable Sports Minister and our Honorable Prime Minister have already gone ahead and announced that India will be preparing for more than 1,500 centers across India in next 5 to 7 years. Government of India has come up with the initiatives of Khelo India Games, Youth Games, University Games, School Games, Winter Games, Beach Games. This is Khelo India. For the past 3 to 4 years post-COVID, we have successfully held 3 national games. So there is enough competition happening. But remember everyone, sport is a state affair and not a center affair. Unless state decides to start engaging and creating these competitions more, we will never see the light end of the tunnel. And this is where I personally feel creating sports management professional, sports science professional, physical education teachers, just talking about this 1.5 million people, schools in India, we require one physical education teacher, one coach, and one trainer. We are talking about 4.5 million manpower required as on today. For me, that's an opportunity. For India to grow and aspire to win medals at Commonwealth and Olympics, this has to start now. And these are number games I have not decided. They are all available on our websites for everybody else to refer and research. My point of submission is we already have all the formulas ready with us. We just need to make a good recipe out of it. Right now, we are not thinking about it. If the day we start addressing these key areas of going to the T with state, with districts, India's got more than 635 district sport complexes across all districts. How many of you know that? 638 district sport complexes India already have. Each of the state has invested into that. I'm not saying they're right, wrong, in good state, bad state. No, I'm not going that. I'm saying they do exist. Are we doing something to get better? Like Rushdee was mentioning, like Cedric was mentioning, can we create more public-private partnerships? Can we create more collaborations? Can we create more development plans? Can we create more pathways defining initiatives? Trust me, the day we start heading in that direction, nobody will come close to India. And that's the vision which our Honorable Prime Minister and Sports Minister currently have. And incidentally, they all belong to Gujarat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nilesh, for bringing up the first part of it, the physical education, where I think lessons and from the state of Kerala all are pushing too hard, but knocking at the doors, things aren't moving. But even as you mentioned, because I've been reading that literature in which you also have put forth, because we've been publishing a book, and I've got all the details of all this. So as you said, it's the right direction. Could be, why don't we put up a proposal again in the center where every state takes initiative, and this is the place where I think we could. It's already. It's budding, so it can blossom very soon. So I think thank you so much, Nilesh, for bringing up these points, and very soon I hope, and we can keep our fingers crossed that with times to come, India is going to be much better. Thank you so much. So, to Rushdee, the high performance, it's great because when you talk on grassroots, it's something very contrasting when you talk of a grassroots coming to the high performance. But from your exposure to the elite system globally, what are the most common structural failures you see in emerging sporting nations when it comes to sustaining high performance over time?
I don't think it's necessarily about the infrastructure. It's about the people more than anything else. It's about not having the right people in the right places. And that, we spoke earlier on about sport being a state, a state subject and a national subject, so to speak. I think these things are really important in that, you know, I believe sport is both a state and a national subject, and to the point of grassroots, one of the structural failures not getting young people involved in sport, not getting enough children playing sport at the grassroots level, at the school level. I think that is critical. Being a high performance practitioner, yes, that is where the majority of my expertise is, being developed over a period of time. But without having a pipeline of talent, and not necessarily, it's wonderful to have talent identification, but the most basic thing is to have good physical education teachers, good coaches at a district level, at the very, in your neighborhood, where you have these coaches, not necessarily, it's not about the technical aspects only, but about being able to encourage children to play, showing the value to the parents as to why these children need to be playing all the time. And again, it's got, it's not about winning, it's about allowing children to play, creating access to competitions, creating access to opportunities for these children. For me, that is a major problem. If we cannot create that and we don't have one really good PE teachers, really good coaches at the district, good administrators, even people that are going to be sitting at those district facilities, being able to manage those facilities, good promoters of sport within government, within state government, good sports management professionals that will be able to create a system that is efficient and effective in, again, creating access for young children to play. That, for me, is key in creating a sports culture. Sports culture is going to be what drives us to sporting success. And it does start right at the ground, at the ground level, creating, and I've seen it. I mean, I've been very fortunate being in India for 9 years. What I saw when we started to what is now is very, very different from a grassroots level to to a high performance level. When I came here, talks just about started. Athletes are being funded all the way through. Kilo India came in after that. Many young kids getting an opportunity. Now, whether the Kilo India strategy is right or wrong, we can debate that. But it is an opportunity that has been created when more kids are being allowed to play. So, creating, for me, having uh, having so many young people and giving them the opportunity to play right down to the district level, the neighborhood level, is critically important for India to be able to move up the medal table. At the end of the day, what you want is more people playing, more people supporting young children play and doing it in an effective and efficient manner. I think that you can't take away the fact that we're moving into an age of AI, we're moving into an age of quick learning. We need to, and you can't go with the traditional coaching methods for that. We have to have coaches, we have to have teachers that take that into account, that are receptive to learning, athletes being able to understand what young students need and being able to give them that accordingly. Capture the minds, capture the hearts of not only the athletes but also the parents. And again, I know you asked me a question about high performance and what the structural areas are, but without the raw materials of having a pipeline of talent, not only talented athletes, but talented people that can influence and lead the system, is going to always going to limit our ability to grow into a top 10 nation at the Olympic Games, at the World Games, at the Fire Games, etc.
Thank you. With the cultural mindset, I think you need to bring about a change for that. And as you said rightly, but I'm so happy that you're bringing down the grassroots, the PE teachers, and bringing down to district level, not the independent process. I mean, without that, it's not possible in terms of the high performance. So thank you so much. Over to you, Pradeep, because with the grassroots, we always talk because that's where the seeds are sown. So from the grassroots, like having a little bit, do systems begin to fail young athletes earliest, especially when it comes to balancing sport, education, and family expectations.
Um, One of the things which I've observed is that a lot more education needs to happen for school owners or school like the principals. A large amount of their evaluation of their sports programs are based on winning and losing. So a large amount of schools, I've been following the Schools Game Federation of India. It's in heavy controversy as we speak right now. It's they are being the PE teachers are evaluated on the basis of wins and losses, and hence a large amount of inter-school competitions at the lowest level are not even organized by schools. Some of the schools choose to not organize it because they don't want to lose. So, one, we need to move losing as a part of it. Number two, do we have levels of competition? Let's say I talk about a school which has a population of 1,000 children studying in that school. They only have an elite team. They don't have an amateur team. So what happens is, as you said, a filter, a pyramid, one team moves out, another team comes in. We don't have a system today in India where amateurs can compete amongst amateurs. And hence, a large number of children choose not to compete, or the school only focuses on the elite level players. So that kind of education for uh, principals, school owners, because they actually have infrastructure. As Sir said about districts, another side effect of privatization which is happening today is, I'm talking about my personal experience, is in my city, you can't go to the stadium for free anymore. So how does a kid from a village go and learn sports? He can't go there. They have something called an economic weaker section of society, but the criteria is you have to be a talented player. How does one kid become talented without even having access? So policy in its lowest level needs to be that public parks, not even schools, public parks need to have amenities. And that has to be an open for all. Large number of people can come utilize that, and that will eventually change things as I hope in the next 10 years.
So much. I think in terms of the shared facilities is not very much prevalent here, where we share facilities rather than bringing duplication. But I'd like to ask a question to you because we were just having a talk. They said that there are certain things where the age certificate was denied and the justice. I think for as athletes and children who are interested and passionate, we need to attract children to sport. So there were certain hindrances which you had. Could you just elaborate more onto that? Which you didn't want
We basically, it's a little controversial, but the Basketball Federation of India came out with a rule which stated that if you don't have a date of birth certificate issued within 2 years of being born, you can't play. District, state, nationals. So for 4 years, I was hoping they'd come up with some alternative. All the other sports also have similar rules, but they have something called the TW3 test. If you don't have that, you can go and get that. So I had 4,000 kids who were ineligible to play competition because they didn't have this certificate, and all of them come from very low income backgrounds. So we had to eventually go to court, and then the court gave us a interim relief and eventually squashed the ruling because they weren't giving an alternative. So that is the kind of communication which needs to increase between the IOA, the state federations, or rather the national federations, in terms of not coming up with such absurd rules. We currently are also struggling with not being able to come up with a pro league for decades. Basketball is actually a popular sport at the school and college level, but we've had multiple leagues come and go over the period of time. I hope now with the National Sports Code, things change where they will not allow monopoly and private partnership is encouraged, because unless we increase private partnership, we're not going to solve the problem. We need more money coming into sports, and an increased amount of transparency by sports federations for private leagues will only help them and help the sport in general. So, over the larger picture of this thing, it's just that there is a lot of detailed research which needs to go into when you come up with rules. When, for example, Khelo India. Today we have such an amazing scheme, but it does not mandate every state to have a district level competition to eventually reach the state team. So in the state where I am, in Uttar Pradesh, we have a one-day trial. Everybody's got to turn up to Lucknow, and from there the team will get selected to go play for Khelo India. And while the vision of Khelo India is that grassroots sports, lowest level districts, and then eventually states, and then a national team gets selected. So as Sir said that everything can't be handled by the national, I think states in themselves will also have to take a conscious effort on how to increase participation at the grassroots level.
I'll just add a point extending what they are saying. There are some recommendations as part of a committee which is already been proposed, and government is taking a serious note and relevant cognizance to put those practices in place as a TOR recommendations as part of that committee. And hence I'm just not sharing the information, but government actually is taking cognizance and wanting to implement that as part of a policy along with the accountability pathways.
Thank you so much. Because what I found was, like recently I was for a conference in Philippines, and that was on safeguarding. So they said, I said, I'd like to take up a course on safeguarding. So they said, unless the federation recommends, you can't. So even if I'm passionate about it, and now with this, they commented that many things coming up, we need a lot of person for it. So if that's the case, then how do we go about it? Don't you think that there are certain changes required? Okay, thank you so much. So now, Cedric, I think you heard all of us from you, from your sports management point of view. I'd like to get your opinions to this.
On which aspect more specifically? I think across all the points that have been mentioned, I think the one that really speaks to me is, I think Rushdee mentioned the track to the grassroots also with you. But even before that, it's about convincing the parents, let your kids play. It doesn't take much to play, and actually, as I mentioned before, we are sociological animals. We like to be together, we like to play. Even before thinking about sport, rules, whatever that is, it is sound for us, physiologically speaking, to play. So it's almost like then everything we've built as a society, creating jobs, structure, etc., goes against that. Let us come back to the roots of it, and becoming a little bit more wild from that perspective, because it's going to be beneficial for everyone. And so I think we need to embark the parents in those transformations and convince them. Then there's all indeed the very tangible questions of having the infrastructure, having the space, having the time in the day also to pay because you need a job, you need to pay for kids, etc. These are all barriers that need to be lifted. So it's probably looking at the overall system and identifying what are the pain points for the key stakeholders and unlock those to make sure that there's as much opportunities as possible. So it's even before creating the right context, if you talk really very much about the grassroots part, we don't need things to be perfect. We just don't. We just need to not have the barriers. And it's really realizing that and deconstructing that and changing the mindset of people to say yes, that's okay and it's positive to go play sport for half an hour. You study half an hour less. So it's finding the balance in this respect and seeing the bigger picture. So I think that's one element on the grassroots side. Now, if we move much higher up in the ladder, on the sport management side, and really more on the professions and the jobs, I think a lot is being done, as I understand it, because there's that vision from the states of hosting the Commonwealth Games, of willing to host the Olympic Games. So things are in motion, and I think probably in the right way. It's making sure that the head carriage of the train is not leaving without the rest of the wagons, that it remains attached, and I think that's where sport managers have a particularly important role to play. Because if I look at you, Nimesh, you've been an athlete, you've been on the back of house side of things now, when you're working in the industry, you're a perfect voice to alert people on yes, this needs to happen because you have experience on both sides. And I think that's where sport managers can really nowadays also make a difference and start contributing to shaping that overall landscape.
Thank you, Seti, because I think children play. Now you look at your play of children, which has changed. You see how many of them are coming to the streets, or how many parents will be wanting them. I think that whole concept has changed. I was in Manipur, where I found all the children out because there aren't any malls, you find them, the children there. But I think rarely you find them. So I think now we have to bring this concept of children play, child's play. No child is left or child's play. But it's a very interesting thing. I think we need to go back to what our traditions were earlier. Things will be very different. And as you mentioned, all if it is in place, things will go. But we hope for the positive, and I'm sure things would get better.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, what I found really interesting coming, from the background that I've come from in the different countries that I've worked in, I think for me, one of the stark contrasts that I've observed in India, and it's again something that goes to access and it goes to maybe the thought process and the culture and the training, and train coaches, train with sports managers, would be that not many kids um, play multiple sports. It, kids start specializing so early. I mean, if you're going to ask me for stats and data, and I can't give it to you, but I can only tell you what my observation is. Even when I was leading the IAS, you bring the athletes in and the young stuff, and I know this is honestly, it might sound counterintuitive that bring young athletes into a centralized program. If if you want an alternative, I'd probably look at that. But if I give you some examples of how it is that you see young children, 14, 15-year-old kids coming in that is only focused on, for example, wrestling or only focused on boxing, and you do the medical assessments, and you actually see the impact of that on the bodies. Kids having overuse injuries at 13, 14 years old should never be happening. Torn ACLs just because, again, it's not necessarily bad coaching, but it's a one-dimensional movement on the body, and that even from a mental development point of view, that's really not something that I would want to encourage. A good friend of mine, Dr. Martin Thomas, who's probably lecturing down here in a couple of weeks' time, he always puts out there and says, if you're a parent, would you send your child to go to school and only do maths? And the answer is no, right? You're going to do geography, you're going to do everything else. And I think the same should be for sports. You let the young kids sample it, they grow. I mean, team sports gives you different dimensions to individual sports. Their movement literacy becomes a whole lot different, and holistically they become, I feel, better athletes overall. And again, it goes to that dropout point. If you're pushing that kid, you're going to get some kids that come to the top, 100%, right? But if you're pushing that kid every single day, same thing over and over and over and over again, It's no wonder they usually have quite high dropout of children in the sport.
And you're rightly pointing out just because of the
I just want to add on that, not having specifically the figures in mind as well, but I would encourage anyone to look at Norway right now because they have come up with a policy whereby I think national federations are, well, in the system, I don't know whether it's government or sport federations, but they're basically banning specialization before the age of 16. And we've seen Norway certain sport progressing tremendously. There's a few other researchers that come into play in terms of training, etc. But I think that's a core element now of their sport policy. They're banning specialization before mid-teen.
I think we all know the early specialization and exposing children to a variety of activities. I think it's high time that we need to bring up. Maybe we could bring up this as a resolution to we all learn in terms of the theory, but actually in terms of practice, it doesn't happen in research.
Yeah, I think, again, it's a very good research point. I mean, there would definitely be lots of research points globally around that. But what does that look like in India when you take into account the context and the culture of the situation that you find yourself in? I think that you can't divorce you can't divorce yourself from that. Look at where the pain points are. For example, young athletes being offered jobs at railways, jobs for life within government. Does that really help? Kilo India, okay, putting big amounts of money into 10-year-old kids in terms of stipends, where kids are coming from daily wage environments, the parents are daily wage workers. Obviously, the parents are going to facilitate that these kids only do that particular sport so that that money can be recurring money in the system. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying we have to look at that and understand the context and how it is that we address the challenges. And those are really good, in my mind, really specific contextual questions within India that will give us some guidelines and potential solutions as to how we could maybe improve on that particular challenge.
Thank you. Yeah, now we come to the research questions for it. So again, we're just sorry to bother you for this marathon questions. So Nilesh, now what are the education interventions or institutional models do you believe the most urgently needed to prepare athletes not just for sport, but for leadership and life for sport?
I think it's very simple. Can I ask a question in the audience? How many of you have played sport? Can you raise hands? How many of you have actually left sport? How many of you played professional sport? How many are state champions? How many are national champions? So you're getting the answer here. The numbers are reducing, and the only reason is that you tend to give up after playing and competing. To answer your question in different concept, see, there are two critical threads for how an athlete can make a career. They chose to make a career in education. They use sport as a recreational matrix. Why can't you have a marriage of a full mainstream education while pursuing sport? It should never be either or. Why can't we, and this is how we have started at ISL, we started encouraging. So we have more than 47 athletes who are international athletes. We've got more than 170 athletes who are state and national champions who are currently pursuing bachelor's, masters, and yet competing for different sport. One of the reasons I'm trying to highlight here is, can we create a model which allows athletes to pursue their education and pursue their sport? We do that for every other profession except sport. That's one of the biggest missing link when it comes to India context. Can it be a skill-based vocational option? Just to give you some statistics, we did one of the national anthems in which we had Olympians and Paralympians. And I was completely shocked to see the number which I'm going to narrate to you now. Whereas in a mainstream Olympic sport vertical, we did not have a single graduate athlete. But in Paralympic, I had 5 people pursuing PhD while representing India in different sports. And the sixth person is a district magistrate, an IAS officer serving in Uttar Pradesh cadre and winning medals for India. So it's not about either or. It's about how we combine that as an option which a significant role needs to be inculcated of the parents' influence in allowing their child to pursue both and not either or. That has been the trend in India. I have experienced that when I was playing. I was fortunate my parents allowed me to pursue both. They did not expect 80 and 90% mark and play cricket. Allowed me to do that, but not every household does it. How can we create that ecosystem? Because now with NEP introduced, you still have an elective option, you still have a minor subject through which you can acquire credits. The majors are non-negotiable, but still in a minor and elective structure, you have a flexibility to capitalize. Why can't we create this ecosystem as part of a industry and part of an educational system? If we come up with a model, we as a advisory, we have proposed this to 5 states where we are consulting to come up with this model, and they have accepted, including a hybrid model. So now I think next academic year, you will start seeing the results where a lot of athletes, and we're starting that from cricket and then going to Olympic sport, because it allows you to pursue your playing and studying at a self-paced learning by appearing for the examination also. That makes it more robust, that makes it more open, and that makes it more credible for even parents to then send their child. And the dropout percentage which I shared earlier, that after 12, more than 90% students leave sport will reduce at least 50%, if not more. Because for all of us, can I ask an honest question? Do we love sport? Given a choice, will you want to make a career in sport? That answers the question. Yeah, yeah. I think just let the panel finish.
We still have time, 5 minutes, and then we'll open the question.
So I'm sorry, I come to the last end, so we just have 5 minutes. So if I could just tell you in a sentence to sum up, what is the takeaway message you could give to this audience, which could bring about which should be a change maker? Just in a sentence, please. I think
I'll do the last.
could you just give a sentence which should be a change maker and for this audience in terms of a takeaway message?
The takeaway for me, I think and I think I've insisted on that, is look at the social elements upon which sport is constructed. The element to change, I would probably have to reflect a little bit more. I think coming from an international perspective, I probably have less ground to share that, so I'll leave my colleagues to do the reason.
Thank you. Yes, Rushdee, for you? In a sentence. Sorry.
Sport has the opportunity sport is a vehicle for changing life, and providing young people with the opportunity to participate and be a part of sport is critical, and therefore the contributions of everybody in and around sport is highly valuable and should be of the highest order.
Thank you.
I would urge everyone to find a way to promote sports in your own area. I started with 2 bamboo sticks 10 years back in a village in Noida, and now my organization works with 10,000 kids in 15 villages across the country promoting basketball in places where you could have never imagined that basketball could be played. So if you can think of finding a way to impact any form of children or area around your house and promote any sport, that would be a great contribution to the nation.
Well, for me, sport teaches lessons which no book teaches you. And if you embrace that, life will be a lot more easy because you'll be able to handle the failure, you'll be able to bounce back from the failure and apply that into your day-to-day life. That changes the entire narrative. Second most important thing, what I quote, that the great Bharat Ratna Sachin Tendulkar always says that let's change India from a sport-loving nation to a sport-playing nation. And this particular philosophy lies in the future of India, who will take this up as a step forward of becoming a sport-playing nation rather than a sport-loving nation.
Thank you so much from my side. Each one of you sitting here, first you start playing and make another at least 5 families playing together. Let's see whether we can make a change. And over to you for the question. Just have 2 questions, please.
The discussion essentially started with education integrated with yes. The discussion essentially started with education integrated with the sports, right? I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm Dr. Pradeep. I was an orthopedic surgeon. Then I left orthopedics. I was a district level gymnast there when I was a kid. Then I left orthopedics and then I got into civil services. I am IRS officer, Indian Railway Services, and I'm joint commissioner. And currently I am working with Indian Railway Senior Men's Cricket Team as a trainer and a mentor. So this is a great privilege for me to begin with. And sir, how can we integrate both of this, education and sports?
Very simple, just the way you've done it.
No, I did not do this.
Well, you transited from IRS and now into the sports education.
Sir, yes. To begin with, yes, I'm sorry. To begin with, the question emerges from one simple facet, and the factor is the sport. It is competing with time, the first one, and it is competing with another thing is that the education system. So I have 2 daughters. I want them to become like Venus and Serena Williams. I was pondering on many things. How essentially should I make them? Then the question was, I integrated, this is a model for me, whether it is useful, that's okay. I integrated a model in my home that is, it has to be academics, athletics, and administration. 3A principle, which I created for my home. The first thing is, my kids, if ever they have to play for, if I have to create time to play, they have to minimize their time in reading. How to minimize their time in reading? Then I read so much that I made my children learn memory techniques. It is very easy and it is only free on YouTube. If the children can learn memory techniques, then if they can learn speed reading techniques, how quickly you can read a material without moving your eyes, whether if it was previously 1 hour, now they can do it in 15 minutes. There I stole time. Then the memory techniques, because I don't have to come back again. Then memory, the second one speed reading, I made sure that they have a good handwriting. Essentially, I stole most of the time for them, then I integrated that time to table tennis. That is how I stole time and I integrated it. That is the first question. And the second question is, the second answer for me is, at this point of time, the social media and the digital addiction is so prevalent that I have to make my child get them away from that mobile phones. How should I do that? Then the question was, I was studying about habits. Habit cycling, how a habit works. Then I made sure my children learn habit cycling, that is cue, craving, response, and reward. And the reinforcement, how essentially this cycle works. I pasted few articles, few papers there. If you are getting into addiction parameters, my dear friend, you cannot integrate the time into the sport. And the second integration was about habit cycles. And the third thing was, how should I make them elite high performance athletes? The whole discussion I was listening to. Are we creating models or are we integrating creativity into the sport as such? You know, I feel that we are not cross-integrating. When I read about Jannik Sinner, he was, in order to beat, he had Rafael Nadal to beat. So he thought, how could I beat? How could I beat? He was essentially thinking, and he got an answer. Then when he went for F1 racing reflex training, then he improved his performance. So here are three important solutions which I feel which are working for me. The first one is teach the children about memory techniques, speed reading, and handwriting. Very beautiful legitimate handwriting so that they can steal time and they can steal energy. That energy can be invested in the sport. That is the first aspect. And the second de-addiction is by knowing how habits work. That is second. And the third one is making them think how creativity works. This is how I created a model for myself so that academics, athletics, and administration can be integrated in my home. If that works, I'm very happy.
There was no question. He answered the question. There's no question.
Yeah. Anyone can answer the question either Professor or Minister. So basically, Professor has talked about the grassroots problem, and the main problem is with principals, sports teachers, PT teachers, and the biggest problem is with parents. The parents are not aware about the sports and career opportunities in the sports, how to take them into the sports and to take it forward. So, what kind of solution we can implement into this? That parents should be aware about the sports opportunities first, because parents, every parents want their kids to grow in academic level, so they can what we say secure their life. They can get the career opportunities and they will be settled out. But these days, sports are taking it as a recreational and the health activity only, not as a career opportunity.
So, no health, no wealth, right? So, I think education needs to be about that you're not playing only to compete at a high level. You're playing to stay fit, you're playing to stay away from substance abuse, you're playing to stay away from mobile phones. I think that education, and I think in today's generation where I'm meeting parents between the ages of 30 to 40, a large number of parents are understanding post COVID the importance of some form of physical activity for their children. So the education side of it needs to be that this is not for a gold medal. This is only to keep you away from other illicit activities, plus at the same time, you have better health. So that kind of education needs to be done for parents. And I think India is changing. I think everybody is trying to wear a smartwatch in today's time and try to get 10,000 steps a day. So that is one achievement. I know we are still having the IIT fevers, though even there statistically not everybody makes it to IIT. So that's the same way for sports. But any form of education where we're promoting healthy and active lifestyle and ensuring that children get a little bit of sports without the concept of winning, losing, I think that will start increasing by the years.
Just for statistical information for you, in urban segment, India is suffering from almost 33% of our urban youth, especially the child level, is suffering from obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and depression. To get rid of this, what he rightly mentioned, if we start encouraging our children to engage in sport, when we were children, our parents used to scold us, अरे कितना बाहर खेलोगे घर पे आ जाओ. Today's parents are scolding, अरे कितना घर पे बैठे मोबाइल पे खेलोगे बाहर जाके खेलो. We need to change and flip that coin. It is in our hand to start doing that as an exercise.
Just adding to this, sirs, this is important in terms of the care, because I think India with young India, do we want a crippled India or young? I think that's a major question. A youth, I think wouldn't they turn out to be a liability? Secondly, the government of Kerala took up a fitness assessment test where nearly, I think more than 5 lakh children were tested, of which they found only 14% of them they were found to be fit who could get in. This was debated in the parliament, and then finally there was a change. So I think such assessment is done, and if you come, because here we only talk, we do not know what the reality is. So until this research comes in, so research is a very important factor which will change and bring about a change maker, where the parents say, my God, I know what's going to happen to my child. So they started insisting and bringing in. So I think research is something which can do wonders. Maybe we could give it to somebody else because we already had time to play others.
Well, I'd just like to, really surgically, back to obesity and all those non-communicable diseases. WHO and the UN have made it and made sport and physical activity the number one mean to combat those diseases. I think that says it all. That's the first thing. Second, when it comes to longevity for us as human beings, the two first factors in terms of staying healthy for longevity is brain health and cardiopulmonary health, your heart, your lungs. The third factor is your thighs, of how solid you are on your thighs to be able to move and remain independent and carry on with your life. So I want to
Yeah, very good evening, everyone. Good evening to all. Maybe I would like to touch upon the two of the verticals from entire sustainable athlete development ecosystem, that is the universities and high performance academy. So my question is for Mr. Rushdee, but anyone from the panelists would, you can share it. So when we talk about research, there has to be something which we build upon. There might be the data from the athletes, there might be the information from these athletes. But often we see that the sports science clubs or high performance centers, academies, and all the clubs, they don't want to, spread the sciences and the data to all academicians, the universities to build upon. So this is a contradictory theory where you want to do research, you want to innovate, and then you want to understand the problem statement, but then you are closing and narrowing down all the information that is built upon those athletes. Now, how you will build it? Academician needs that data to build upon. So, Mr. Rushdee can, because you are from the IIS, and then everyone can, follow on.
Yeah, firstly, I think a lot has changed. There's a lot of changes that are coming about right now. For me, the most important thing, having led an institute and a residential facility, and I see Eric sitting right there from VBF, it's not about, I think, if the way research needs to be positioned, and I said it earlier on, is what impact is it going to have? How's it going to make the bone go faster? It's not about an academician, an academic coming and saying, we want to research this. The question should be going to the people on the ground and saying, please tell us what is your problem, right? What are the challenges you are facing? And then build a research question around that. If you do that, it doesn't become research for research. Research has to be applied and implemented. If you cannot show how that is going to have a performance impact from a high performance point of view, then no coach is going to take you seriously, no high performance director will take you seriously, because the perception out there will just be, it's just about a paper, it's just about publishing. How is it that your research, and it's got to also come from a point of humility, right? And there's always this perception out there, there is generally a perception out there that a sports scientist is going to come and say, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm not even going to try and sugarcoat it now. That is the general perception. It doesn't mean that a coach coming from a traditional background and doesn't have a master's degree doesn't understand what is going on. And that's generally the perception out there. We are going to come tell you how it is that you're going to be better. Now, when you come from that perspective, you're always going to hit your head against the wall. As opposed to, how is it that I can help you? Please tell me what your vision for your program is, what your vision for this athlete is, what are the problems and the challenges you're facing right now, and then go back and say to the coach, I've listened to everything you said. This is what I think I can do in terms of research in order to help you answer the problems that you're facing. And then take the feedback again and say, from the coach, The coach will either say, yes, actually that's an accurate reflection. Please show me what you can do. I think when you go with that kind of approach, it's far different to, okay, I'd like to do this research. Doing that research, you're not telling us what you want to research. You're not telling us why you want to research. You're not telling us how it's going to improve what we're doing. That would be my advice to you. Always start again. It goes back to the relationship that you build and the understanding and the humility with which you approach it.
Just to add a reference for your there is enough and more data available. We don't play with our data. We don't create knowledge reports. We don't create white papers. We don't create a peer review going this hierarchy. He just spoke about 10,000 schools playing volleyball. Why are we not referring them? Khelo India. There are 9,500 athletes participate from each state for Khelo India. State games happening for most of the states. National games, more than 10,000 athletes participate in national games. More than 5,000 volunteers get involved in managing that. Why are we not preparing some reference points of our own? We are not paying attention to creating that. We have enough and more data available at our disposal. We are not using it for better effect. We engaged for the past 4 years, we've been engaged with Mumbai Marathon to create a socio-economic impact report. 540 crore are raised through one 2-hour event of Mumbai Marathon. Nobody is using that data. There are more than 1,500 short-term, long-term marathons happens across India where the participations have increased. We have enough and more data. Nobody is taking an effort to create a simple knowledge template report for reference, publish it for people to read. Why do we have to depend on the Western world? Sorry, no offense made. For us, because Indian system works differently. Let's create our own template and then have a comparative analysis. Why don't we have that as an approach? We don't make that effort. We always want to rely on the American practices in India. It's not going to work unless you create your own template and then have a comparative analysis. You will not find the right solutional approach. This is my submission to the research approach.
Because one is we do not have documentation. One of the major drawback with our researchers to talk about, because we were trying to write a research. I referred to your literature, editing a book, and we found was we couldn't find any literature when we talk of documentation in terms of sport. So I think it's the right time where we could take it up. But secondly, I very much agree. Here we all go, we take up a research and we consider these athletes that at times, there's an object or something. Come on, we want a study. Give a questionnaire to them. So many a time, I think we change that actually tendency of getting the coach into confidence, asking them what is that they want. From that perspective of research, I think that is much more meaningful. Now I found a number of the para athletes have stopped. They said we will not give them as subjects. For me, I had been experienced a number of things they have stopped because they said you are exploiting this situation. So I think it's time where we can do it. And as Sir rightly pointed out, I think documentation we can start, and already we said there's enough available. So I think it's high time we start moving, and research is a very important area because even the coaches should go evidence-based, they should be driven rather than experience-based. I think that can bring out cost change. So with this, I need to thank our eminent panelists, Kulkarni and Pradyut and Rushdee, Cedric. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'm sure that this should be a start and it should be a change maker, and in times to come, hope that this particular panel would be real. Thank you. Thanks to the experts, and
I request to all the panel members to kindly stay for now. I request Professor Vimal Patel, Vice Chancellor of Rushdee University, to felicitate the panel members. To start, Mr. Nilesh Kulkarni. Mr. Pradeep. Dr. Isha Nayak. Mr. Rushdee.
Dr. Cedric. And Professor Raviranjan.
You should say that he's a sustainable partner
Yes,
because
sir.
he comes every year.
And in the third edition also, so you can. And also Professor, sir, and also Professor
Oh,
Raviranjan.
yes, please.
And then we can have a group photograph. I request everyone to stay for the group photograph. So that's how we are ending the day one of the International Olympic Research Conference. We'll be moving to the day two, and the theme of the day two will be the